I had a patient in the sexual health clinic that was a little younger than me at the time. I'll call her Hannah just to protect her privacy. But she came in and was very vulnerable. In downtown Kingston, a lot of gangs operated and sometimes they targeted young girls, probably 13, 14, she seemed to be at the time, and had these sexual relationships. And there was definitely that power dynamic. She was pregnant and she was terrified, and she also had numerous STDs. And she was coming in and the security stopped her because her skirt was too short. And I got so annoyed and angry at that because that's one of the colonial rules that we still do in the Caribbean, where we focus a lot on appearances, in quotation, superficial appearances. But two, this was a young girl that was vulnerable, that was coming in for help in the right place. We want her to come to a health center. She was trying to have an abortion by tying a rag onto a toothbrush, inserting it into her vagina, dipping it in bleach water and different things, and trying to drink these concoctions to get rid of the pregnancy. She didn't know what to do and she had nobody to go to. So coming to health professional in the public healthcare system should have been the place that we want young people to come to when they're in trouble and when they need help. But she was being blocked because of what she was wearing. And that just, I don't know. Yeah, it just got me really pissed. But that story and that experience just triggered something in me to be like, what's the point? Because I'd write a prescription for her. She probably can't afford to buy the medicine. She would go back that situation that she's in, that she has no control over, and probably not get better because she can't afford any of it. And I was like, am I really helping people?
This episode was recorded on riverside.fm. Log on today to start your own podcasting journey. Hello, Kizanne, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm happy that you're fine, and I'm happy that you're here. Happy that we're having this conversation. You know, I often tell people I like to know them on a first name basis, because it makes conversations easier, and it
Yeah.
helps me remember that it's not a guest, or it's not just a figurehead speaking, but it's an actual human being on the other end of this conversation. So I'm very happy that I have you here. Just tell my audience a little bit about yourself before we actually dig into the details of this.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kizanne James. I am a medical doctor, but I also have my own consulting business called Health Equity Solutions, where I help develop leadership skills in people who in uh, new to leadership, but also mid-level leaders. I also do cultural sensitivity training, EDI training for health systems and different organizations, and do workshops and trainings as well. But mainly, I work as a senior public health specialist for the government in the UK. So I have different portfolios professionally. Uh, and I guess on a more personal level, I see myself as a change maker, so I think this is a really good good place for me to be to have
For
this
sure.
conversation with you. So and that's very important to me. And I guess when we talk more, you'll hear more about how I ended up in this journey that I'm in now.
Got you. So I do know that you are very tuned to the bone. I'm very
Yeah,
happy
100%.
of, of that. Yeah, and also in our conversations, and well, through my a little bit of research, I realized that we went to the same university as well. So
Did we
yeah, so we do
did.
have something in common. And let's just talk about not necessarily the university, but growing up in Trinidad. What was it like growing up in Trinidad, and how did it shape you into the individual that you are today?
Yeah, I had mixed experiences. So some that were very positive and
Hmm.
some that were quite challenging. I grew up in a single parent household with my mom and my two aunts. And my father, he chose not to be a part of our lives, even though we knew him and would meet him occasionally. And that caused its challenges as well. But
Hmm.
our family struggled financially, and that impacted the access that we had to healthcare, to resources, to education. So we struggled to pay for school, sometimes to get to school, our uniforms. I would have the same uniform, and my mom would just add fabric at the bottom as I grew taller and add some to the side. Go to school with what we call pallet man sneakers. I know when I tell people now, they don't know what that is, but it looks like bootleg canvas.
Right.
And it will wear out so quick because it was so cheap. And I would put cardboard and newspaper so that in the bottom of it, so then when we walked to school, I wouldn't be touching the pavement. So that's the
Got you.
struggles that we had. And it was, I think, now, and that's why I have a very strong opinions on equity and decolonization and community living, and changing systems, particularly as the Caribbean is in its post-colonial phase, as we were um, run by different European powers before. Um, why I feel strongly in having equitable resources for everyone, um, basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, transport. That should be baseline for everybody in society. And then anything else would be, icing on the top. Because I knew what it was to live without those things and to be dependent on government services and the kindness of people in my church or in my community to make it through, which is the positive part of my experiences. Because if it wasn't for that collectivist way of upbringing that we have in the Caribbean, where your neighbor looks out for you, they have mangoes on their tree, they would share
Right.
them with you. We have that kind of giving and sharing kind of community. But if you don't have access to that, you have a very, very difficult time. And that access is dependent on your race, your skin tone, how much money you have, what your parents did, if they're married or divorced, and those things shouldn't matter to a child. A child wasn't asked to be in this society, in this world, and so they should have access to resources regardless of who they were born into.
Beautiful. And you're absolutely right. So then somehow you ended up going into clinical work, right?
Yes.
And then there was a transition into a systemic leadership and consulting transition. So first of all, let me know what your journey was like getting into the clinical work, and then a wider change into a broader macro level
Yeah.
systematic change.
I mean, looking back, I myself am surprised at the journey I've had. I had no idea that I would end up doing what I do now. It definitely wasn't intentional at the time.
Hmm.
But I described growing up in challenging circumstances, and that continued right through. So when I was in USC, there was in Gate at the time, so I had to work three jobs at once for over a year, and I just made one semester's tuition. But
Wow.
eventually, we had Gate coming in, which provided me the opportunity to go to school without having to pay for tuition. I did have to get student loans, which was available then. And this
Hmm.
again is why I believe that we should have some core resources for everybody, regardless of their background. So I finished university. The first degree I did is in biology, and then applied into med school again, only having the opportunity because of government funding, something that not everybody would have had access to or could have access to even now. I think things have changed since my time using Gate. But what inspired me to go to become a doctor in the first place was a teacher, a primary school teacher of mine named Miss Myrna Walcott. She would read books to us and inspiring books from people who grew up in difficult circumstances. And she read Think Big by neurosurgeon Ben Carson to the class. And to be honest, a lot of us from our class have now become doctors now. And I think it's because of her influence, because we saw in in that story ourselves, somebody coming from poverty, single parent background, struggling through and being able to be a neurosurgeon. And so I was like, I want to do that. So applied to med school, got into Jamaica for different reasons. I think getting into Trinidad would have been difficult. I'm black, dark skinned. In
Hmm.
Trinidad, we have, racial tension between people of East Indian descent and African descent, and that played a part in whether, in my day, whether you got into med school at UWE St. Augustine or in other places. And so a group of us went to Jamaica. And then a lot of things changed for me when I went to Jamaica. Um, and one of those things was an experience I had working in a sexual health clinic in downtown Kingston. Before that, I thought I'd be an internal medicine specialist or a
Right.
surgeon. Yeah, I just thought that's what I'll do. I'll be on the ward. I'll be like House on TV, or one of those TV
Right.
that and with my coat and stuff, and telling everybody what to do and solving these big puzzles. But I end up didn't take in that part because I had a patient in the sexual health clinic that was a little younger than me at the time. I'll call her Hannah just to protect her privacy. But she came in and was very vulnerable. She was in a relationship with somebody much older, but for safety. In downtown Kingston, a lot of gangs operated, and sometimes they targeted young girls, probably 13, 14. She seemed to be at the time, and had these, sexual relationships. And there was definitely that power dynamic. She was
Mm.
pregnant and she was terrified, and she also had numerous STDs. And so she was coming in. She had, I remember it clearly, this satin, I can't remember what it's called, satin wrap on her head, and a short skirt and a white vest. And she was coming in, and the security stopped her because her skirt was too short. And I got so annoyed and angry at that because, one, that's one of the colonial rules that we still do in the Caribbean, where we
Mm.
focus a lot on appearances in quotation, superficial appearances. But two, this was a young girl that was vulnerable, that was coming in for help in the right place. We want her to come to a health center. And she was facing that obstacle. When I met her and had a chat with her, and then a senior nurse came in and she was supporting, um, she was trying to have an abortion by tying a rag onto a toothbrush, inserting it into her vagina,
Wow.
dipping it in bleach water and different things, and trying to drink these concoctions to get rid of the pregnancy. Obviously, those things didn't work and was just going to make her sick. But she didn't know what to do and she had nobody to go to. So coming to a health professional in the public healthcare system should have been the place that we want young people to come to when they're in trouble and when they need help. But she was being blocked because of what she was wearing. And that just, I don't know. Yeah, it just got me really pissed. And I, again, didn't change career paths then, but that story and that experience just triggered something in me to be like, what's the point? Because I'd write a prescription for her. She probably can't afford to buy the medicine. She would go
Right.
back to that situation that she's in, that she has no control over, and probably not get better because she can't afford any of it. And I was like, am I really helping people? Am I making their lives better? Um, and I couldn't say that for sure. And that was just one of the situations that I encountered. I have many other stories of and many other clinical stories of caring for people who I know what we were providing wouldn't have helped, and that the problems that they were facing were much larger than, me as a doctor writing a prescription or doing a surgery or whatever it is. It was the systems in which they were living in that was going to keep them poor and sick and probably give them a shorter life expectancy than the rest of us who could afford because we have resources too.
Wow, wow, that is a really powerful and interesting story, and I understand why somebody like that, or somebody who would have experienced that, would want to spend time helping marginalized people. And we'll get a bit more into that after this break. Bruh, people keep asking me, how do I get into this podcast space? How do I actually get into podcasting? But it's so easy. I don't know why you guys are overcomplicating it. All you need is a browser and riverside.fm. It's that simple. This tool is designed to simplify high quality video and audio online. Whether you're doing interviews for your startup, doing a live webinar, or just need some talking head clips, It records everything locally. It means that even if your internet lags, you get smooth video quality at 4K and smooth audio as well. Plus, it turns your long form episodes into short clips that you can share across social media. If you want to start podcasting or record it online like a pro, click the link down below. You spend months planning for the perfect event. You have great guests, you have great speakers, and the event is a success. But in 24 hours, it's gone. But what if it doesn't have to be? Introducing Event Voices by Game Changers. We shoot a live podcast episode at your event, turning your speakers into content. We blend our production quality with your event. Your speakers plus our production quality and distribution equals more leads for everybody. For more information on how you can transform your event into something game-changing, contact us via the information on the screen. All right, Kizanne. So before we left, you gave me a very powerful and interesting story about how people who are less fortunate or people who are disadvantaged in some ways um, often have issues getting healthcare that they do need. Um, but I also heard you speak about decolonization. What is that? And
Mm.
how does it relate to healthcare?
Oh, that's a big question. So, in the Caribbean, because we were occupied, and most of us are either descendants of slavery or indentureship or some sort of oppression due to another power, whether it was a European power or American power. Um, but that when you have another power coming in to control what's happening with the people, they would be imparting their way of life, their religions, their language, their dress, the way their systems are, uh, all of that onto those people. And a good way to do that is to make people think that what they have is inferior to what the colonizing power has. So whether it's clothing, if somebody dresses in a way that is ethnic or original to their ancestral way of dressing, we tend to look down on it and think, oh, they're not as good because they're not wearing a jacket, a tie, and a shirt because that's a professional way to dress. Or whether it's in music, what we appreciate as music, or food, or dialect. We still have a lot of that in the Caribbean, where we are a melting pot because we have different tribes and different ethnicities that have been brought together as slaves and indentured laborers. So all those different cultures have melted and created what we have now, which is a beautiful Caribbean way of talking, our accents and some of the words that we've um, developed ourselves, whether they had French or English origins, and we've mixed it with some of our African or Indian languages. But that's unique to us and it's special. But you've always been taught to not speak that way, to use the Queen's English
Right.
and present yourself. Well, for us, the power that colonized us last was the British. So I'll be referring to the Queen's English, but there were other powers that did that. And I don't think a lot of us in the Caribbean have challenged what we believe as not good, um, based on our historic experiences. And it's ironic because I live in the UK, and the UK have paid for me to get a scholarship as a global leader, the Chevening Scholarship, which was brilliant. I'm not, I don't want to sound ungrateful. Thank you, UK government, for choosing me to
Mhm.
come to the scholarship. That's not what I'm saying. But when I came here, I thought it was really interesting because I was taught that certain things was the right way to do it because that's how, when you go abroad, they would respect you. But
Right.
they themselves don't hold on to some of the things we hold on to.
Right. Right.
So it was so strange to think to learn about professional dress, for example, and having a piercing or hair color or um yeah, well, anything, any of that. And then you come here and they don't follow that. They dress according to the climate. So if
Right.
it's hot, it's going to be shorts and a vest and a t-shirt, even if
Yeah.
it's in the workplace. If it's cold, it's going to be layers. But we've now made things really difficult for ourselves because it's very hot home. But the appropriate thing to do is always have your shoulders covered. You can't even have a sleeveless and go into a government building in Trinidad, even though
Right.
the weather calls for it. And if you were up here, that's how they would dress. So decolonizing, I know I just went on a whole tangent.
It's fine.
I feel strongly about, but it's about reclaiming what was our original way of doing things, or even defining what we want it to be. Just once we're not using another power and deciding that that is what it should be for us, we should be interrogating that ourselves as Caribbean people and thinking what works for us, what works for our climate, what works for our people, because if we don't do it, nobody else would do it for us.
That, wow, that is interesting. So then let's bring it to the healthcare though. So how does it connect with the healthcare?
It connects so much. So from that example I had with the dress code to come into a health center, that is ridiculous. I just think it's ridiculous. Somebody is
Mm.
coming for healthcare. You shouldn't care, especially if they're vulnerable. You don't know what they could afford. You don't know what they have access to. You shouldn't be denying people that. But also some systems. So we need to think about how we structure our clinics, how we structure our health services, how we treat people when they come in to get care. You know, it's very hierarchical. It's hardly ever working with the patient and deciding what would be best for them based on their circumstances. And it's very much, top down, I say this is the right thing to do, you do it without paying respect to indigenous or herbal practices, things that we have brought from our ancestors, the little bush tea, the little herb tea, whether it's, whatever it is, I'm not so versed in all the herbs myself,
Right,
my
right.
mom, they would know, but those things have a place and that's fine. I think that's important. That's part of us. Even our birthing practices. Why are we not managing pain for women in 2026? Why are you having people having babies without any pain management? Why are we abusive sometimes to women when they come to give birth? Why it is the partner, whether it's husband or boyfriend or whatever, can't come there to be there to experience birthing? Why we have such toxic ways of raising our boys versus how we raise our girls? What is happening with us? Why are we holding on to these things that are not keeping us well mentally? Because mental health, that's another thing for Caribbean people that we struggle with. But physically, why are we doing it the wrong way?
Interesting. So then where do you come in? How do you help?
Yeah. So that's why I think I got really interested in systems and leadership, because the system is one thing. The system is literally what do we put in place to have somebody from point A come into point B. So we have somebody who's sick, they're likely at risk of, say, they have diabetes or pre diabetic. They have certain lifestyle choices that would make that person develop diabetes. And we know that there are long term consequences of that: heart disease, eye disease, kidney failure, which we have high levels of in the Caribbean. So, what structures we need to put in place that would prevent person from even developing that in the first place, to giving them the best healthcare possible? So those are your systems, and the leadership are the people that will be making the decisions about those systems. If you have poor leadership, you will not succeed. That's just it. That's just the
Right.
reality. If you don't have somebody with vision, if you don't have somebody who is going to take perspectives from everybody and try to create answers that would be useful, if you have somebody who lacks integrity, who doesn't have core values that are about building people versus building themselves and enriching themselves, you will not have systems that are successful. Leadership is one thing, the systems is one thing, and I think we as people who use the system also have a responsibility. But again, that comes from putting the foundational things in place first, and then other things start to fall into place. So that's why I focus on those two areas: helping people strengthen their leadership skills, using evidence-based tools, using my own experiences. And I've had, I must say, from a young girl in a village in Aruca, Trinidad, to the spaces I've been in my career, I've been very fortunate, and I know what works from seeing it, and I know what doesn't. So I try to share that so that the health system could be better. And I think that's my way of giving back, that is more meaningful for me, in my opinion. Everybody has a different journey than me meeting patients one to one, which I still do. I just do it voluntarily. So if I see a patient, I don't charge. But what I make my income from is public health and leadership development.
Oh, okay, interesting, interesting. So then I'm interested in finding out what like the reception is like. Like, do people actually listen to you? I mean, so okay, let's go back a little bit. So you're doing this for Caribbean institutions, right? Or
No, well,
individuals?
actually, most of my clients are in Europe.
Ah, okay,
Yeah, I would love to do it for the Caribbean. If anybody listening to this would want somebody who could help build health systems, I'd love that. That would be my dream. There's more, in my opinion, more appetite for this type of work in this developed space than
yeah,
I would say in the UK they have universal healthcare, where
right,
people don't pay at the when they go to get care. So they're very very keen on making their systems as efficient, and as equitable as possible. We in Trinidad and Tobago have a similar healthcare system, so it does make sense that we would try to make it as equitable and as efficient as possible as well. So there are things that we could get parallels from.
got you, got you. So then okay, so then what is the reception like generally in the European markets, and what do you think it will be like if you bring those same ideas to the Caribbean?
I think it's been quite positive in
Okay.
the European market. It has been going well, and my contracts have been increasing since I've started doing some of this independent work. I do still have my public health career, so I do that full time. I work for the government, but outside of that, I do this leadership development, and it's the desire and me being hired has been good. So I've contracts up until next year. In Trinidad or in the Caribbean, I am not sure. I am sure that the approaches will work because they're evidence based, and I have that cultural lens. I understand. I understand how the healthcare system works in Trinidad as a patient myself before, and also as somebody who worked there, did my internship in Trinidad and Tobago, and somebody who still interacts with the system either through family members or friends or patients that I have. um and understanding what tools work, I think it could have some really good results if I am hired in Trinidad, if I must say, if I do say.
Okay, interesting. All right, but do you think it is really ultimately a mindset that it's a shift in the Caribbean, or is it something much more technical than that?
I think is multiple things. So there is a mindset, there is cultural change that you'll have to do in any system if you want to adapt it. Change is a slow process, particularly if it's organizational change, and particularly if people haven't been brought into that change process from the beginning. So that's one. So there's that mindset change, but there's also accountability and processes and policies and procedures that you could make that would help navigate or help support that system change towards things. You'll have to start within a particular area and work and develop that. People always talk about money as a barrier, and I struggle. I struggle to. There are two sides to that. So when you don't invest in preventative and in being yeah, taking the forefront, being preventative, putting things in place, you end up paying more later on. And that's just how it is. If you have a car, you're hearing a noise, you ignore it, you continue driving it with the noise, you might have worsened whatever mechanism is happening. So we're in a reactive state, and so the cost to that resource is very high. So we see it and we think, oh, we don't have money to afford this because it's costing a lot. versus thinking no matter what we do, we have to find a way to balance and to invest in preventative measures. Whether we start targeting the amount of sugar that's in our food. I was just home probably 2 or 3 weeks ago and just ate some of the snacks and juices and was reading how much sugar. It's insane. You have sometimes 3, 4, 5 tablespoons in a small drink, and then we wonder why we have diabetes. So there are things that you could do legislatively to support health of your people. So that's one thing. And then you have systems where you have corruption and you have wastage of resources and you have poor communication skills. You see in leaders now in the Caribbean using language that is not something you want mirrored in the younger generation at all, because it's taking us down a rabbit hole that isn't healthy. So yes, it's complex, but it's so doable. It's so doable. Other countries have done it. Other parts of the world have done it, and have seen great results. Because if you have a healthy population, you have a population that's productive, you have a population that's happy, and that would keep building. So yeah, I think we're missing the mark.
Got you, and we have to help. In that regard, we have to help fix those issues and stop missing the mark. Um, across those key areas, particularly in healthcare, because I mean we quite literally need healthcare
Yeah,
to survive. So
we do.
all right, all right. So we're moving on to our other break, and we'll be back with Dr. James right after this.
What if I told you I made all this with just CapCut? My name's Lion Elaton. I'm a professional filmmaker and an AI filmmaking pioneer. I grew up loving movies and TV, but I joined the Coast Guard out of high school and I got stationed in Alaska. Hollywood couldn't have felt further away, but I kept pursuing my filmmaking dreams. Then I discovered AI. 2 years ago, I created my first AI film using CapCut, and my career took off. I started Film Crux to help close the gap between indie filmmakers and Hollywood, so that people's only limitation was their own creativity and imagination. Essential to that is using CapCut because it's so versatile. So everything from being able to retouch humans, AI transcriptions, to tracking, to background removal with AI, it's all possible. You're no longer limited by your resources, and instead you can create something that's really as close to what you had in that initial spark of your vision. With CapCut, I get to live in the worlds that I imagine, and I get to bring you with me.
You spend months planning for the perfect event. You have great guests, you have great speakers, and the event is a success. But in 24 hours, it's gone. But what if it doesn't have to be? Introducing Event Voices by Game Changers. We shoot a live podcast episode at your event, turning your speakers into content. We blend our production quality with your event. Your speakers plus our production quality and distribution equals more leads for everybody. For more information on how you can transform your event into something game-changing, contact us via the information on the screen. All right, Kizanne. So you have really opened my eyes and spoken a lot about what needs to be done. I again through my research I realized that you did a TED talk in 2017 talking about sexual um, health and sexual rights concerning in healthcare. Um, just tell me a little bit about that experience, giving that TED talk, being a little girl from Trinidad, and what was the basis of this, and how, also maybe how can we use spaces like TED and those global digital platforms to really elevate the global south.
Yeah, that was a really exciting experience for me. At the time, I was invited to be a TED speaker, but they invite a few people, and then you have to audition. So that was quite scary for me. So what you had to do, or what I had to do, I don't know if other TED speakers they had something similar, but I had to memorize my speech. I had to do my speech people had to evaluate and they'll give you feedback. And then I had to memorize it word for word using a clicker and changing the screens myself. So it was a lot to practice and to do. So I remember even after giving the TED talk and still I was on the bus and memorizing it, and I was like, oh, I don't need to anymore. You know, I've said this already because I was practicing it so often. Um, I think it's a really good platform to showcase some of what we have done and can do in the Caribbean, especially on our innovation. We're small. I mean, I like, Jamaica says, what we're little, but we talawa. Meaning that we're small, but we have so
Power.
much things to give. Yeah, so much to give to the world, so much things that we have developed. And if you think about where we came from, our people are resilient and we are strong. We literally were enslaved for over
Mhm.
400 years, and indentured laborers came here with nothing, but their clothes and a few items, and were able to build these societies in over 100 years. That's impressive. Some of these other parts of the world, they've been around for centuries and were able to do what they've, brought things to where they are now. So I think we have so much to show. I did sexual health talk. I was mainly a sexual health advocate for
Mhm.
young people, again, because of that experience in Jamaica, but also understanding that generation after generation, time after time, we always have a very, a very, what
Is it
word to
taboo?
use? Unrealistic. Yes, it's so unrealistic approach to sexual health education in the Caribbean. One in three young girls in the Caribbean have been sexually molested, usually by somebody related to them or somebody close to the family. We have high levels of rape. We have so much things that our music is very sexualized, and we still think that we're going to tell young people, you know, um, abstinence. If that's your choice, that is fine, and I will support you in that. But for those who don't want to make that choice, we need to give them the information, because whether or not we give them the information, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we are doing our young people a disservice by not being honest with them. And if I may even say, some of the older people, by the time they were those young people ages, they probably had how many children already. So we know it's not something they themselves followed. So the better thing to do, and I think that's just across the board, is give people the information and the support to make best choices to improve their health. Don't take away the autonomy of somebody, particularly if they are at risk for things that are not ideal, like incest, rape, these things that is happening. It's in our society. Um, so that digital tool was simply signposting people to where they could get sexual health information and resources, whether it's access to condoms, contraception, just knowledge to understand how to protect themselves. If they were raped or if they were a victim of incest, what to do, who to talk to, what they should do in the first steps. Some people don't know, and the first thing they might do is go have a shower because of what happened to them. And that is just removing all the evidence of your body. So just giving people the knowledge, giving people knowledge doesn't mean they're going to act on it. You're not going to make somebody hypersexual by telling them how to be safe. That is just, again, but what you will be doing is protecting young people from serious consequences that could negatively impact their lives. So that talk was about using digital tools and about breaking the taboo to sexual health, just like any aspect of health. I know, again, in the Caribbean, sexual health and mental health, oh, we're very, very taboo about those two things. But they're all part of being human beings. Um, and if you don't give people the right information, they will get the wrong information in a place that is harmful. Whether it's their classmates who telling them, I've heard it all. Whatever it is, you would be surprised to hear the things people think they could do. Have sex upside down so they wouldn't get
Wow.
pregnant. Yeah, use all kind of different things to take to get rid of a pregnancy, or you can't get AIDS or STI from, if somebody is a certain age or if they
Wow.
did this or that. And those things are not true and they're causing us to be sick. So tell people the right thing. So that's what the TED Talk experience was like. And yeah, it was interesting talking about sex like that on a stage, but it was
Yes,
necessary.
very necessary, very necessary. And like you rightfully said, information is never bad, right? We educate people, we let them know, okay, this is the safe way to do it. And even if you're abstaining right now, if you do eventually become sexually active, you will have that information anyway, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
as young as possible, um we can educate them and let them know how to take care of their body, because at the end of the day, it's your body, you have to learn how to take care of it, right?
Yeah. And there's things that you would say, at the right age for a young person. If it's a child, you talk about good spots and bad spots to be touched. And again, that's age appropriate. You're not telling them how to have sex, but you're telling them if somebody is violating them, this is what you're looking out for. So I think it's a broad topic, and I think we're definitely doing young people a disservice when we're not giving them accurate information.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so then, um I know that a lot of your work is focused on young people and helping young people out. um and you have experience with adolescent healthcare in the Caribbean. I know you've done some work obviously in Europe and Asia, Africa. Um, can you tell me what cultural differences you have seen, and how do these differences shape these barriers to healthcare in various communities?
But I think some of the common things that come across that I've seen is usually stigma around certain conversations. Um, Sometimes that comes from countries that have similar colonial histories as well, because a lot of that was rooted in that, or certain religious beliefs that also impacted how people responded to information, or how they responded to being given information. So that has been similar across the board. Um, Things that differ, it depended on laws, how restrictive they were or how liberal they were. So restrictive, or if restrictive in a way where certain conversations you couldn't have at all because you're either a woman, you're an unmarried woman. Usually it's gender related as well, or your age range. And then you had to also consider taboos and misinformation that was already pervasive, and particularly in areas where you had high levels of disease. That's because, again, there's a risk to having poor information. It also impacts the spread of diseases. So that was also something to think about. It is still very important to respect people's cultural beliefs. And I believe in people's autonomy. So if people didn't want to hear or didn't want to understand or learn, that is fine. There's no, you're not going to be forced to. But I struggle when people prevent others from learning, or others living the way they want to live. I don't think that's how we should live. I think that people should have the right to decide for themselves what they want to do with their bodies, with their lives, in a free society.
Understood. Understood. Yes, and I do get that point of view 100%. All right. So okay, so we see that culture does impact the way we access information and get information. You are from a Caribbean context, and this podcast is catered to a Caribbean audience largely. It's catered to anybody who would care to listen or to view. But many of my viewers and listeners are from the Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora. If you were to give one piece of information, um, as to a way forward for our Caribbean audience, as to how they can improve in the way that they accept information and deal with information, particularly of healthcare, of the healthcare nature, what piece of advice would you give to them?
Hmm. I would say broadly that we should challenge some of the beliefs that we have about how to operate, and question if it's appropriate for us as a people, or if those were rules and beliefs that were handed to us by people who, oppressed us at a particular time in history, and it has just come down. I think we also have to think long term and in big picture way. Think about how the decisions that we're making as a people impact the next generation, and us in 10 years, and us in 5 years even, and try to lean into that versus thinking now, and you know focusing on things that won't matter in a few years. I think encouraging people to think quite critically and to question things would really help as a people in terms of what we believe we could achieve for our own health, but also the health of our society. Don't just take for granted our power and our autonomy and our ability to come up with creative solutions, for health challenges. Don't limit ourselves. Don't limit yourself. You could achieve it, and we could achieve it as a people, because we have achieved so much already. And I know sometimes things look grim, and we see lots of negative things in the news, and that could make us feel really disheartened and discouraged. But there has been also so much growth and so much positivity that we need to also focus on, and to acknowledge that we can do for ourselves.
Beautiful. Final question from me. Looking ahead at health equity solutions in the next 5 years, what would it look like from your point of view? I know you said that you've started getting more contracts, and we love that for you. But going forward, what does the next 5 years look like in terms of reach, development, and growth for Dr. James and her initiative?
Yeah, I think ideally I would want more and more people to have a healthy life because of the interventions that we have done as health equity solutions. That would be great for me. So it's not even about making more money or having more power or access or whatever, but it's just having people who may not have achieved that healthy life or have access to healthcare be able to do so, and to live the most fulfilled life that they could have. That is what I would hope that this organization could do in the
Beautiful,
future.
beautiful. And I do appreciate that you said that, and I look forward to seeing more of that from you. The conversation today highlighted a lot of what is wrong with our Caribbean, but also what is right with us as well, and what we
Mhm.
can build off on. And to thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for the conversation. I
Yeah.
appreciate you volunteering to come here. And I appreciate that you want to share this message with the world. I'm happy for this, and this is what this platform is for.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. And thanks for having me. It's been
Beautiful,
great.
beautiful. All right, guys. So Game Changers is available wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and share our content. Also, check out our website where we have merchandise and many other things that we can share with you as we strive to build this platform going forward. Anyhow, as always, as I always say, stay hungry, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.